This is part of evidence-based practice. This is the evidence about why communication is so important. And partly what I wanted to focus on today is the part of the checklist that I see in my pottering in and out of the theatres that I'm not quite sure is done as well as it should be, because I don't think, because the checklist was mandated to us, that we understand how important communication is to the safety of our patients. And this is why communication is important. We need to make sure that when we communicate that people know what we've said, they haven't misinterpreted it, and good communication makes teams work much more effectively, and especially in emergency situations. And there's probably a huge difference here at Christchurch in comparison to Nelson Marlborough, because you can often work, particularly surgeons and anaesthetists, with a group of people that you don't know a lot about. So this is my first exercise of good communication. So you all should have 2 of these cards in front of you. Ta-da! So with the first one, there's lots of nurses here, so there should be lots of pens. So with the first one, this is a quiet exercise, because what I want you to do is look around the room, pick somebody that you think you know quite well, and I'd like you to very quickly answer those questions. Okay, so have you all managed to be able to put an answer in the box? Now, do you need to quickly ask the person that you're writing about whether you've got the answers right? I'll give you a couple of seconds. Okay, can I have a quick show of hands now of those who got 4 out of 4? Very good. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so this to me demonstrates why, even when you work with the same people all the time, that you actually need to introduce yourself and say your role. I often go into a theatre and I'm there to ask a question, but I'm there at timeout and nobody even wants to know who I am or what I'm doing. And and for me, who's one step removed from clinical on a daily basis, I find that really interesting when I go into a theatre that I'm in charge of, and there's quite possibly the registrars particularly wouldn't have any idea who I was. I could be the cleaner. So now the next thing I want you to do with the other card is perhaps find somebody you don't know and ask those questions. Sorry, I can assume this time that you've got 4 out of 4 for all those questions. And it wasn't even difficult, was it? So tomorrow, when you're doing the timeout, and it says it quite clearly at the top, the team introduces itself and their role. You won't tell people that you're Superwoman or whatever, as I have heard from time to time, which is funny, and I know it can be quite difficult when you do work with the same people every day. And certainly when I've been out to discuss these things, it's something that's quite difficult, because the literature suggests that everybody needs to speak up. And so if you've spoken up once in a non-threatening way by just saying, "Hi, I'm Miranda, I'm the circulator for the day," then when I need to tell Ian that there's blood pouring on the floor, that I will actually feel a little bit more comfortable to say, "Excuse me, sir, do you realise there's blood on your shoes?" Like lots of it. And that is the basis of what it is. So tomorrow morning, I'm sitting on your shoulder. So in operating theatre, what hampers communication and what improves communication? Now, if you're all observant, there's some pieces of white A3 paper there, and there's some coloured felt pens. The thing that I want you to do now is, I think probably 1 page for hampers and 1 page for improves. And I'll give you a few minutes to discuss this. 10 is it? 10 minutes to discuss this, and then we'll go around and take some ideas back. When I was doing this, I came up with a couple of ideas, because I'm sure if you've all read the stuff around communication, one of the things that we're all supposed to do is call people by their first name. And I wonder if one of the things that does hamper communication is that it's been my experience that, particularly with surgeons, not every one of them is very keen for me to call them by their first name. And perhaps it's generational. Perhaps it's me. Until I get to know somebody like that, I'm not particularly keen to call them by their first name either. And I think what I hope improves in communication is respect. And so they were just some ideas to get you started. So do your best with the coloured pens and off you go. So how have you got on with that exercise? Do you think you've got enough brainstorming to get us going? So the lovely Emma might have Kat's got the mic. So what I thought we might do is, if you all each table give me something that you think hampers communication first, and then we can work on the positive things after that. So who's going to stick their hand up first? There we are, right there. Lorraine? Now, this is a good group because I know the people's names.
Lorraine, I'm in the acute theatre. The constant telephone calls and answering pages.
Yep.
And never 1 page, usually 3 at a time.
Next table. Yep. Thanks, Helen.
So we've got busy time pressures and OT, operating lists maybe running late or not running to time. So all those kind of pressures from other areas in the hospital to make sure that we get our stuff done so they can get on and do theirs.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, it might be coming toward.
Hello. We had assumptions that other people have observed something that may be happening, or...
Absolutely, and this is what this is all about, is not assuming anything. There's some people down the front here, Kat, who are very keen to take part.
We put things like loud music, in a hurry, intimidation, lack of skill mix.
Yep.
Just 4 of them that we picked here. There's a whole page, but that'll do.
Yeah, with 1, but that's great. Okay, the table behind you want to...
Lack of teamwork.
Lack of teamwork, and by that do you mean the multidisciplinary team, as in, or do you mean just amongst the nurses?
Everyone doing everything separately, not working together.
Yep.
Yep.
There's a table down there.
Being unfamiliar.
Sorry?
Being in an unfamiliar environment.
Yep.
Working with unfamiliar people.
Yep.
Yep.
And I think this group here.
We had some language barriers, confidence, routine can obviously be a bad one there, and fatigue.
Okay. So with all those things that you suggest hamper communication, does anybody strongly disagree with any of them? Does anybody think that they're not issues where they are? No. And so it's why we need to keep going with this. I harp on regularly that the surgical safety checklist for me as a nurse is not something that I wouldn't do every day, but it just doesn't seem to be done very well. And as Steve pointed out, even though we all go, when he says some of those things, I'm sure they're very common in most theatres, that it's often very difficult to get people to stop. I'd like to say welcome to our helipad. And in 2018, it'll be on the other side of the hospital on the new building. We're obviously very removed from it in the operating theatre because we don't hear it on our side. Okay, so what do you think that we can do that would enhance communication? So who's going to start first?
We thought the most important thing was structured communication.
Structure, yep.
Lower levels of noise.
Knowing your roles for a smooth running of the operating lists and therefore more open communications because you feel more confident.
Yeah, excellent. And that is that not one of the questions that first part of the timeout says? Everybody introduces themselves and their role. Fantastic. We're getting the right answers. Lee, your table looks like you could. Well, Tracy told me I wasn't allowed to pick on her, so I'll.
This is probably going back to what you said earlier, and I think it's just around respecting each other and each other's roles.
Yeah. So, have we had something from that table? You? Shajin's table, that one there?
I think good leadership can improve the communication. Good leadership.
Good leadership, yeah.
Either from nurses or other team member.
Yep. And the front table, you gave me 4 things. You want to give me some?
So we've got standardization and team configuration and good planning and preparation.
Good planning and preparation? Yeah, excellent. So what this little exercise points out to me is that we all know why we need to do it, and we all know why if we do it well, it makes it better. So hopefully as we move into the next phase of the checklist and we get into the briefing and the debriefing stages, that you'll have an understanding on the ground that it's not about a tick box exercise. It's not about the nurse who gets the checklist and ticks all the boxes while they're waiting. And if you're really efficient, you could do all 5 patients and then all you would need to do was put the sticker on the top as each one came in. Fantastic. You know, I mean, I've moved around the North Island because the South Island haven't asked me to come and talk to them, but I moved around the South Island and the North Island, and there are lots of things that people talk about. One of the private hospitals talked to me about how do you get people to speak up when the team is so constant. You know, you've worked together for 5 years and 4 of the 5 people in the theatre are the same people every week, and you've just got this one person who's there because somebody's sick or on holiday. How do you bring that in? Because, well, we don't really need to do that introduction stuff. And I know it is difficult, and I'm sure there are ways around it, but you need to remember in the back of your mind that it's better in an emergency if the person themselves have spoken up and introduced themselves. So, moving along. So with the next part of our project that we're rolling out, we're going to roll out 4 communication tools that go with this. When we did our proof of concept project, we had 10 communication tools that we used, and these were the 4 that the 3 hospitals that used it felt that were the best. And I'll just quickly go through those. So you can all read those, but call-outs are generally most often used in an emergency, but also when you need to just ensure that everybody knows what's going on about pieces of information. Closed loop communication is about the person saying something, and then the person who's receiving the information needs to let the sender know that they've understood something. And I would think that we as nurses, and that's where I come from, we use this a lot when we're doing prostheses or talking about specimens. And I know in the past I've had surgeons who get particularly grumpy when we ask them if the specimen needs to go in formalin, when all my specimens go in formalin. But I think it's just about describing that this is a gallbladder and we're going to put it in formalin, and somebody needs to say, yep, I'm going to put it in formalin. That those sorts of pieces have to be done. And it's about making sure that the receiver's got the correct message. ISBA is a framework that's been used a lot, and I know at Christchurch Hospital it's been introduced for quite some time, and it just gives a standardisation of the way that you give and receive information. I would think a lot of the time in the operating theatre, it's about that blessed telephone, Lorraine, making sure that you get the right information and to hand on. And so if we do it in a routine way, then that helps getting the information right. And the last one is an interesting one. It's called the two challenge rule, and it supports the speaker raising a concern, because there's a lot of research around that it's often the most junior member of the team who actually notices that something's not quite right, and it's about this two challenge rule is about raising the concern. So if by chance you're the scrub nurse and you hear one of the nurses in the theatre telling either the surgeon or anaesthetist a piece of information that you don't think that they've heard, you might have to be the senior person in the team. So when they ask again and say, "Excuse me, Mr. Civil, but there's a lot of blood on the floor," and he's still not taking any notice, that's when I'm supposed to say, "Ian, why is there all that blood on the floor, and why aren't you paying any attention?" And so it's about empowering people to make those statements, because often the people are so engrossed that they haven't actually noticed what's going on. There's quite a famous story about a plane flying to a little island in Barbados, am I right? And well, it's not a little plane, it's a big plane. And the junior guy on the flight deck recognises that there's not enough room for them to actually land and stop and stay on the island. And it's only him speaking up that means that a whole lot of people don't die. And I think it's one of those things that we need to keep in the back of our mind. So, any questions? Do any theatres think that they have anything that helps communication? I personally think that at Christchurch Hospital, our whiteboards with the names on has been a really helpful tool for people remembering each other's names. We have a whiteboard that's labelled, and it's got 3 columns, and so the nurses are in one, the surgeons are in another column, and the anaesthetists are in that 3rd column. Am I right? And so various theatres have different ways. Some have magnetic signs with the names on, and other people write them on. But people have got really good about it, and just coming in and writing their names as if they're in the theatre. So, it's quite a visual thing, and anaesthetists tell me particularly that they like that because they recognise our faces, as lovely as they are, but sometimes I can't remember which name goes to which face. But if there's a name up there, they go, oh, yeah, that's Sue. So, and then they can ask, and then that helps because then they can say, Sue, can you do whatever it is that you need to do? Any more questions? Yeah, Sue.
What do you do with the surgeon that you've worked with for 5 years who still doesn't know your name?
I don't know, perhaps we should ask a surgeon.
I was trying to avoid that question while I was thinking of suitable answers. It is actually quite a difficult problem because you could attack it front on and call him by the wrong name, which would be a slightly contentious thing to do. Probably not the best thing to do to get everyone on the same track. And my only thought would be, as Miranda was saying, some sort of incredibly obvious statement of your name. And then when the inevitable question is, why are you wearing that? Well, I just wanted to make sure you knew my name and whatever, I don't know. I mean, I think that's something that is actually true. I can relate to that. I don't think you're making it is, and I strongly support what Miranda said about having the names on the board because I think I try pretty hard to remember names, but I'm hopeless. And we do the briefings and we do the timeouts, but when there's the circulating nurse in the room and I'm saying, could you just make sure that PAC screen flicks back to the angio, please? Do you think I can remember his or her name offhand? No, but if it's on the board, I will, and it makes me feel much better about being a communicator. So those are the only thoughts I have on that topic, but I absolutely relate to it.
Thanks, Ian.